Well, hello and welcome to the studios of Bedford Community Television. My name is Ray Chadwick. I'm your host today for this edition of Candidates Corner, which is a production done by Bedford Community TV so voters can be introduced to the people and issues that they will see on the ballot on November 6th. We're fortunate today to have with us the Republican candidate for Congressional District 1. His name is Eddie Edwards. Eddie.
Hi.
Thanks for coming in.
Great to have you.
Congratulations.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, our pleasure. Congratulations. You got through the primary.
Yes, primary's
We'll
over.
leave that behind. Thank goodness.
Yeah.
Now it's time for everybody who liked you, who liked Andy, who liked anyone else to get together and decide we like you better than we like Chris Pappas.
Right.
But this is the issue. You know, I've been thinking a lot about the election and our adversaries, of course, the Democrats. And they are running people that really they push them forth as likable and well-known. I've known their family for years. Oh, they were a great teacher, or whatever it may be.
Right.
But the issue comes that people have to look beyond that. You know, I hear people saying, well, I don't want to vote for Republicans because I think President Trump is brusque and obnoxious. Or I want to vote for this Democrat because they're so warm and cuddly. People have to, in my opinion, look beyond the personality of the candidate, good or bad, whatever it may be, and consider them to be, in addition to their personhood, they are also a foot soldier for an ideology.
Of course.
So if people make the mistake of, let's say, disliking President Trump and then saying, oh, I'm going to vote for Democrats so I can have a change, and guess what? You're now moving away from the things that Trump has done. And if you vote for, let's say, Chris Pappas, because you know his family and you went there for the restaurant, all great things.
Right.
I'm not trying to knock any of that. But you're voting for someone who can be, if elected, the person that gives a majority to Nancy Pelosi.
Right.
And he will be a foot soldier because, you know, he won't have the tenure to be able to influence the party. He will basically be another rubber stamp. So I keep coming back to move beyond the candidates and talk more about the agendas. What are Republicans going to do? What are Democrats going to do?
Right.
So are you sort of finding people paying attention? They look at what's going on the last week in Washington and go, oh, my Lord.
Oh, sure. I think you're out there and you're talking to independent voters, even some conservative Democrat voters, let alone just Republican voters. I think people are really interested in how they're going to feed their families. At the end of the day, people want to work. They want higher wages. And what we have seen at the federal level and state level from Republican leadership are jobs. What we've seen is an increase in wages for the first time. The first time, seasonal work this holiday season those workers will receive pay incentives, bonuses.
Right.
They are receiving retirement benefits from working temporarily. They're increasing their pay to bring those folks in. So a lot of wonderful things are happening under this economy, under Republican leadership.
Right.
And I think if we start to look at what's happened in this country, we put Republicans in charge that they've asked for. They've reduced taxes. They spurred growth
here and in Washington.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And one of the things that we were told by the prior administration that you're never going to see a 4% growth again in your economy.
That's right.
No way
it happens.
No way it happens. Well, it certainly doesn't happen when we culturally condition our population to depend on government.
Yes.
You know, I often say government does a wonderful job of managing other people's talents and resources, and that's what they do. That's how they try to control the population. That's what this is about. So if you're someone who's interested in greater liberty, greater freedom, expanding your business, having your school choice for your children, making sure that our men and women who serve in the military are respected, and that we're not the piggy bank for the entire world, then you're going to continue to vote for this type of agenda.
Yeah.
But if you're someone who believes that somehow the conservative agenda is not working and you want to go back to a Democrat agenda, which means less jobs, lower wages, more government dependency. For the first time in our country, I believe the Census Bureau just reported the vast majority of children in this country, 52% of them under 18, now live in a household where at least one person in a household is receiving a means-tested government program.
Really?
So the vast majority of our children now are growing up in a home where there is a government program, subsidy in that home.
Yeah.
And that should be shocking for all of us.
It should be shocking. It should.
Yeah.
It's so directly counter to the whole ethic of the people
sure.
that founded the country. I got to go back and dispute one thing you said. You talk about government doing a wonderful job of managing people. It does a horrible job of it,
No,
but that's certainly what they aspire to.
Yeah. So I may have missstated that. What I meant.
I knew what
that
you
was,
meant.
Yeah.
They think they do a
total
great
sarcasm.
job. Yes, I
Total
got
sarcasm.
it.
Because that's what government does. It's set up to manage someone else's talent,
And
someone
money.
else's resources.
And money.
Absolutely.
Right.
And we try to demonize folks who've done well.
Yeah.
We say that,
What's wrong with
that guy or that girl's done really well in their business. They should pay more. They're not paying their fair share. They're not paying their taxes. And if you look at what happens when you put more money back into the taxpayers' pockets, when you put more money back into businesses, what happened?
No,
They grew the economy. They grew the
grew the
economy.
economy.
And, I think we really have to be serious about the direction of this country. And we have to stay focused on what's important. Now, in 2 years, the president was able to turn around, less than 2 years, turn around this economy. When we had 8 years of someone telling us, no way you get beyond 2% now. That's the new norm.
Right.
And I think if people are serious, if people are truly serious about putting moms and dads, communities back in charge, they're going to vote for Republicans.
Well, if you look at what the parties have brought, and I often say this, if you put Republicans in power, what will they do?
Oh, sure.
They will reduce your taxes. Why? Because they think it's your money to begin with.
Right.
So, and you can probably make a better decision on what to do with it for your own self-worth than some bureaucrat in Concord or in Washington.
Of course.
They will reduce impediments to growing business. Why? Because growing business means more jobs, which means competing for employees, which means higher wages, which means more money in your pocket.
That's what we're saying.
Yes,
that's exactly what we're saying. And I would also remind of
So why
voters-
would anybody change
right and
at this point?
But I also remind the voters here in New Hampshire, we're not a blue state. So the fact that we have 4 delegates, all are Democrats.
Yeah,
All are Democrats.
fascinating.
And so if you're looking to have representation, it seems to me you want conservative representation as well. We've had quite a bit of Democrat representation in Washington. And so that the governor has to spend time asking for help and partnering with Washington to do the things on behalf of our state, because we can't get our 4 delegates now to partner. Right. And the gentleman I'm running against, my general election opponent here, is part of the resistance movement, which means let's resist, let's impeach, let's get rid of this president so that he can empower Nancy Pelosi. Now, one of the things that Democrats are looking forward to, they're looking forward to Maxine Waters being in charge of finance.
Now,
Now, think about
just
this
a
moment.
phenomenal concept, isn't it?
But think about that for a moment. We're
Yeah.
going to take away all this wonderful growth in jobs.
Yeah.
And we're going to put Maxine Waters and Nancy Pelosi in charge of our economy now. We've seen that already. It didn't work out well.
Right.
And so why would the American people go back to a place where there are fewer jobs? The fact that, as we just described, now businesses are competing for labor.
Yeah.
That's a good thing for low-income earners. That's a good thing for the middle class. Those are good things.
Good thing for everybody.
Absolutely. It grows it's growing the economy. And when you put business-minded folks in charge, you get growth. You get people off government assistance. We should be more concerned about the number of people we take off government programs, we take out of government housing,
Right.
rather than measuring our success by how many people we put on government assistance or how many people we put into government housing. You mark your success by how many people are not dependent upon government. And if you want to return to a place where government is in charge of your family, not you, government is in charge of your community, I just can't imagine people are going to vote for that.
Yep.
And listen, we're all likable, right? Everyone's likable at some level. And I think you have to move past that, as you described earlier.
Yeah.
I've had
It's
wonderful
the agenda that matters.
It's the agenda.
It's not my
It's the
goal
policy.
to have Mr. Popularity or Ms. Popularity, Miss Congeniality
Right.
down in Washington.
Right.
I want somebody who will actually implement market-driven approaches that reduce the role of government in trying to manage my life.
Right.
Because I believe every one of us has the ability to do that. And part of my problem, because you just mentioned it, if you think about what I think is the exemplar of what Democrats will do if you give them power again, talking about managing your life.
Yeah.
I think back when Reid and Pelosi and Obama were running the show, the Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act of 2010, where they nationalized school lunches.
Right.
And no longer could you send your child to school with a lunch you made unless it was conforming to a government edict. This is, you remember all the stories of, high school students and the football team, they're throwing away this and going back. It's crazy.
Right.
We can manage this. And the real key is we have to make sure we don't put people back there.
Of course.
Who treat us like children, worse yet, to try and expand and exacerbate, the divisions. They spend all their time trying to get, women fighting against men, black people fighting against whomever,
Right.
You name it, whoever it is.
Of course.
And it's all because they want to be the ones that are the champion for this subgroup instead of the champions for us all.
I've said this repeatedly. If you look at this issue, Democrats, from a legacy standpoint, has always been the party of control.
Right.
I mean, they're the oldest political party in the nation, and since their inception, it's been about controlling people and resources. In order to do that, I have to give you an enemy. And they have convinced many minorities in this country, blacks, Latinos, for instance, that somehow white Christian conservative folks are your enemy. They've convinced gay Americans that straight Americans are your enemy. They've convinced men and women to fight with one another. That's not this country. And the legacy of the Republican Party has been to unite us, and based upon the Bill of Rights. And I keep trying to remind people of this. If you just simply look at why the Republican Party was formed, just look at it, why it was formed.
It was an
right,
get rid of slavery.
Exactly. And so we move from there, and the Republican Party is still the same Republican Party it started out as. The Republican Party never guaranteed that government would take care of you.
Right.
In fact, the folks who looked like me years ago, they didn't want government involved. They knew the government was oppressing them, enslaving them. They didn't want that. And so the Republican Party stepped forward and said, no, the Bill of Rights will apply to all Americans. Never guaranteeing that somehow government would be your new master, but government would not interfere with your right to keep the fruits of your labor. Right. That's what that was all about. And
life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness.
Right. And so how is that any different than the Republican Party today? We want you to keep more of the fruits of your labor in your pocket. We want you to work hard, but when you create a culture, starting in the 1960s, that somehow this country has to be dependent upon government. So now, as I've often said, everyone wants something from the cookie jar. No one's interested in who made the cookie jar, who put the cookies in the jar. We just want a subsidy out of the cookie, our cookie out of the jar. And to do that, you need to create division. You need to create, and you see this happening again. And as I say to people, it never comes down to the issues. Those who are progressive, those who are liberal, seldom do they want to debate the issue.
Right.
The issue. Republicans are fairly comfortable with debating issues because we want to look at it from a logical standpoint. If you work hard, you're probably more likely to be successful. Life isn't going to be fair or easy along the way, but you can overcome anything. I think I'm a testament to that.
Sure.
But also, the Democrats know from an emotional standpoint, if I can say to you, as a white conservative male, somehow you victimized me. And you say logically, how is that possible?
How'd I do that?
What did I do to you? And that's what Democrats want us to focus on. And once again, this election cycle has been reduced to what? Fighting between men and women.
Right.
Fighting between men and women, fighting between blacks and whites again, fighting between gays and straights again. This is the thing that we've come to every election cycle, because when the economy's doing well, what do you have to campaign on?
Right.
If you're a socialist,
yeah.
Well, you can't say, well, I guess you can campaign like my opponent is doing, like we should increase the minimum wage. Why? Why should the government be interfering in a space between you and I? I use Uber often,
right,
to illustrate this. Uber is the best form of free enterprise, promoting free enterprise, because Uber is nothing more than what I did when I was a teenage kid. Right? You have your car, and you say to your buddies, "Hey, if you need a ride, give me $5 for gas, and I'll take you
we'll
there."
take it there.
That's what Uber is all about. Someone in this state, in this country, been very creative and figured out a way to make money, to start a business from there. But what does government do to stop that growth? Regulates it. Steps in and increases the taxes on it, because somehow we're not being fair to everyone. What's more fair than me asking you for something, you receiving a pay for it because you and I have agreed on the amount? There's nothing more fair than that. And so I think when we get to these issues and people try to divide this nation, and the only reason you and I are talking about this is because people are trying to make this out of an issue already in this campaign.
Sure.
People are suggesting that somehow this is going to be an historic election for New Hampshire. We'll have its first black congressman, or have its first openly gay congressman. And I've said from the very beginning, how does that help you?
That's got nothing to do with it. It's the problem.
But how does it help you as a taxpayer here? How does it help you as a business person? How does it help reduce the cost of health care? New Hampshire simply having a black person in Congress or a gay person in Congress does nothing to reduce health care. Does nothing to improve the lives of the Granite States. It certainly doesn't do anything for the economy in terms of growing the economy and keeping us on track. What it does is signal a divide here. And as I continue to say, I'm not special because I'm black. You're not special because you're white. Pappas is not special because he's gay. We're not special because of our race, sex, sexual orientation, or gender. We're special because of what we give back to our families, our communities, and our nation. That is what defines us. This notion that in 2018, we can't have a conversation of policy differences without invoking race, gender,
racist, sexist, xenophobic,
and
homophobic, whatever.
But these are the things that the Republican Party has always been the party of the underdog. We've always been the party of the underdog, and because we have laid back and focused on growing our economy, taking care of our families, many on the left have gained this foothold in this country, and they're desperate
to keep
us fighting with one another.
Right. Because it takes your eye off the ball. And you mentioned the the $15 an hour minimum wage concept. There's a couple ways to get there. One is basically you force it through a government. And what that does, it says that any job that really isn't worth paying $15 an hour, such as, let's say, new workers with minimal skills, they get frozen out. And you look at robots are appearing in McDonald's, Burger King, you order here. That's where that's going to go, because the more you drive up one cost, others become
landscaping.
Same thing.
Robots are being used for landscaping.
Sure. They're going to be used for a lot of things. That's a whole separate discussion.
No question.
But where I was going to go was, you have another way to get to your $15 minimum wage. You boost the economy, and with it comes the number of jobs, and then the employers have to compete for wages and for employees, and the wages go up.
Right.
You can get there. But
it's
that
economics
way,
101.
Supply and demand.
It's very simple.
Exactly.
But if I'm not interested in you working and making sure you can take care of yourself, I'm opposed to supply and demand.
Sure.
I want you dependent on me. If you're the government, I want you to make sure that we can begin to control your life. And you think about this. This is what's happening. That's why I went back to the 52% of all people under 18 now in this country live in a household receiving a federal subsidy or some type of government subsidy. And I think the further we go down this road, allowing this to happen, the more powerful, more larger, expansive government becomes, the less freedom we all enjoy, the less freedom we have.
That's totally true.
And so this goes back to your earlier point. This is about an agenda. Do you want more families in charge, or do you want more government in charge? It's that simple. Do you enjoy the direction of our economy? And when people are empowered with opportunities, economic opportunities, they make better decisions for themselves. Every single problem we face in this country started because government interfered. Every single problem. And I've been over a little bit under 2 years now, but I've been asking people, give me one example where government stepped in and more freedom was realized, greater prosperity was realized, and it reduced any cost to the American people. Not one example. You can't think of one example, at least I can't, where government policies have delivered greater freedom,
No,
greater prosperity. It doesn't happen.
It is antithetical to it because,
Right.
because it is the aggregation of power in the government in order to direct your activities.
Right.
I think the government, I go back to the founders, and the founding documents of the country. And I love, lots of people talk about liberty and equality. I like life, liberty, and the one I particularly love is the pursuit of happiness.
Right.
And I think, in my opinion, that particular phrase is what draws people from around the world
Of course.
to people to risk their lives to come here because they have the chance to be free. They have the chance to do what they think they're capable of.
Right.
And succeed or succeed not, but they can play in the game
Oh, sure.
as opposed to being constrained.
So this is the greatest nation.
Yeah, and frankly, the folks that your opponents and the rest are in the business of arguing that it's not. And you can find all kinds of examples.
Sure.
You look through the Congress, you look through the Senate.
Yeah.
Well, America used to be great. It was never that great. Well, wait a minute. We have survived 240 years and become the beacon of hope
Right.
for the world in the Second World War. Yet, you name it. If there's an earthquake in Sri Lanka, what happens? They wait for the U.S. Navy to show up and help.
Right.
So it's hard to go.
Right. And this is why education becomes so important.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Our founders understood education.
Yeah.
Folks have always understood knowledge is power.
Correct.
And when government denies you knowledge, refuses to share knowledge with you, that's why I believe in so much transparency in government. It has to be there. And so we look at around the globe, no one comes to anyone's aid like America.
True.
No one. And if you look around the globe, I often say this, we represent 6% of the world's population, 6%. So, but we're taking care of 94% of the world. From a monetary standpoint and from a military standpoint, we protect everyone, everyone. And so at some point you have to ask yourself, when are other people going to start paying their fair share to America? Yeah. And our founders wanted to prevent this type of globalization, so to speak.
Right.
We understand that we're in a global economy, right? But we want to be treated fairly. Right now, we've changed the EU's mind on how they treat us in terms of trade. We've changed Mexico and Canada's, and we're working on China.
And we changed
NATO's approach.
Yeah.
And because why would America put itself in a position to have someone else dictate what is fair trade? Because it's not even free trade. Free trade is an exchange. And so we all believe in free trade. We all support free trade. We're just sick of America being taken advantage of. And I think if America falls, where do people go?
Yeah. Where's the next place to go?
Right. And listen, we're the most generous nation on the planet. The most generous nation on the planet. No one provides more resources and human capital to the world than America. And I think we have very little to apologize for, very little to be ashamed of. We have a right to secure our border. We have a right to expect that people are going to obey our laws and follow our laws. We're a nation of laws so that we don't serve at the whim of men and women. If you look back at the founders of this nation, they did a masterful job of creating a structure that has withstood the test of time.
The rule of law.
And the rule of law. But what's happened is that we've had people come along every so often who believes that we should walk away from the Bill of Rights. And I ask anyone who is a progressive or anyone who wants to move away from the current agenda that's happening in this country, what do you think we would be if we didn't have those Bill of Rights?
That's correct.
What do you think, how do you think that we created we authored the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment, the 19th Amendment. Look at all the amendments that have happened after the first 10. And where would we be? I can tell you, without those Bill of Rights, without the Republican Party, you and I wouldn't be having this conversation. And so at the end of the day, we should be proud of this nation. But we can't find unity even around our flag, our Constitution.
Phenomenal, isn't it?
Our Declaration of Independence. And so you think about this. People are asking, I want people to walk across the aisle. I want people to be unified. Why can't we unify our nation?
Because there are two different approaches.
Right. But why can't we unify our nation? And you have people who are actually saying, let's resist the president, but I'm going to walk across the aisle.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to resist. Yes, that doesn't make any sense. But secondly, and more importantly, how is it possible for you to expect that you're going to have agreement on any policy when you can't agree on something as simple as our flag, as a symbol of justice, freedom, and liberty, not only for Americans, but for the entire world? And if we can get to a place where we can be that disrespectful to our own symbol, what makes you think people can get together and agree on a policy? We have to get back to a place where we unify our country, and that's speaking in terms of being Americans. Americans.
Right.
Not black Americans, white Americans, Latino Americans, male, female, gay or straight, Americans. And I think that's what resonates more with independent voters. I think it resonates well with Republicans. But we have to get back to a place. I even think even Democrats, conservative Democrats, believe in that as well. I mean, if you're a progressive now, or if you're a socialist now, then you believe in controlling a lot of what we're talking about,
right. Including your opinion or your right to have it.
Of course. I mean, I enjoy talking to people who disagree with me.
Yeah. Well, it's a chance to maybe convince them otherwise,
right,
and it hones your arguments.
Right.
You know, this is the way it is supposed to be. So, so really, the question is whether the voters are going to hop up and send you to Washington with some common sense, or your opponent, who is a well-known individual and everything, but he will be the foot soldier of the resistance, the change that they are trying to implement. We've run out of time here, so why don't you sum it all up and tell the voters why they should send you down there?
Absolutely.
You sold me, but they're the ones that count.
We have less than 30 days now to make a decision that is going to impact the state of New Hampshire for the next 2 years. I'm hoping that over the last, since April 2017, as I campaign in every city and town in our district, that I've met many of you, and I have tried to convey honesty, integrity to you. I've tried to make the argument that this is about our families and our communities. This is about limiting the role of the federal government. This is about the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, the 10th Amendment. This is about us. This is about us coming together as a community and saying that we want to be in charge of what happens in our lives, not the government. This is about sending a clear message that we don't want the vast majority of our kids on drugs. We don't want the vast majority of our kids dependent upon government. We want to be able to grow our businesses, grow our families without intrusion. And you have a clear choice between myself and my general election opponent. And I'm asking you to support me. I'm asking you to check my website out, Edwards4NH, Edwards, F-O-R-N-H, and give me your vote. You won't be disappointed. You won't regret it. Thank you.
Thank you, Eddie. Thanks for coming in. I wish you all the best of luck in this.
Yes.
Because this is, I think, a very important, we made a lot of progress in the last 2 years.
Yes.
And it's really angered a bunch of people. The question is whether we keep and expand the team that's given us the progress,
yes,
or turn back away. And I hope the voters will make an informed choice. Make your vote count on November 6th. Thank you for watching today.